Are you crazy? Her father snapped, slapping her harshly. How will you survive? You have no talent. Your parents are not rich. You're not even good at any single thing. Her father's voice was loud and firm. I don't want to hear another word about this again, he said. You will never amount to anything if you continue this way. Oh. No child of mine will end up as a failure, or else I will disown you. In the village of Enwani, there lived a family called the Ezes. Mr. and Mrs. Eze had three children, two daughters Amara and Chinwe, and the son Emeka. Mr. Eze was a humble civil servant who managed to finish higher education. He believed that education was the only way to success and was very particular about academic excellence. His wife, Mrs. Eze, was a petty trader who sold snacks beside their house. Although the Ezes didn't have much, they always managed to put food on the table. Mr. Eze's greatest hope was that their children would bring them a better future. Emeka and Chinwe were exceptionally bright students, always at the top of their class. However, Amara was different. Despite being older than Chinwe, she struggled with her studies and had to repeat two classes, making her fall behind her younger sister in school. Mr. Eze was proud of Emeka and Chinwe, who always came top of their peers in their respective classes. To him, they were bright stars who had promising futures. He saw them as an extension of himself. However, he was ashamed of Amara, who was always at the bottom in her class. He often wondered why she was different from her siblings. He loved her the least because he felt she was odd. He nicknamed her Olodo, which is a nickname for someone who is very dull. He often told her, I don't know where you inherited this dull brain from. Definitely not from me. You better sit up in your studies or else I will send you packing. As a result, Amara was treated poorly in her family despite being the first daughter. Mrs. Eze often tried her best to help Amara with her homework, but instead of paying attention, Amara was always absent-minded and would get carried away, drawing sketches on her notebook and daydreaming. Mrs. Eze would complain out of frustration, saying, Why do I have to teach you the same thing over and over again? Do you want to be a failure? Chinwe and Emeka would giggle, whispering Olodo as they poked fun at her struggles. This became a household nickname for Amara. Her father and two siblings never missed any opportunity they had to call her Olodo. Every evening after school, Amara had to help with all the household chores before she could even start studying. She would sweep, wash dishes, and mop the floors, while Chinwe and Emeka were allowed to focus on their schoolwork. Amara, why are you so slow? Her mother would scold. Hurry up and finish the dishes so that you can at least try to study. As Amara scrubbed the pot, she could hear her siblings laughing and chatting as they worked on their assignment. Where is that Olodo? They would joke, knowing that she was too busy with chores to join them. One evening, while Chinwe and Emeka sat at the dining table with their books spread out, Amara was still outside scrubbing their school uniforms. Her hands were sore and her back ached. When she finally sat down to study, Mr. Eze frowned at her. Why can't you be as smart as Emeka and Chinwe? He asked angrily. You will never amount to anything if you continue this way. Oh. No child of mine will end up as a failure, or else I will disown you. Mrs. Eze tried to calm him down, reminding him that she is their daughter no matter what. Amara's eyes filled with tears, but she remained silent. She didn't understand why she was different or why she couldn't be as intelligent as her siblings. At night, she lay in bed feeling alone, wondering why her family seemed to dislike her so much. Mr. Eze contributed most to the reason why Amara felt out of place in her family. He expected academic excellence from all his children, but Amara fell below his expectations. As a result, he never allowed her have the comfort that his two other children enjoyed. He often gave Chinwe money to make her hair and gave Emeka money to get a nice haircut, but to Amara he gave nothing. This was the reason why Amara always carried her natural hair bare to school. At school, she stayed quiet. She was moved to the front of the classroom by her teacher because she was struggling to understand even the simplest lessons. She was older and taller than her classmates, yet she had to sit at the front so she could hear and understand better. She never interacted in class. She never raised her hand even when the teacher asked questions that weren't related to academics. During breaks, she sat alone, watching the other children play. She felt like the black sheep of her family and the laughingstock of her class. Even when she reached high school, she remained lonely and had low self-esteem. She hated both school and home, though home felt worse. Sometimes she even wondered if she had been adopted. Emeka was now in his final year of secondary school and was preparing to write his A-level exams to study medicine in the university. His parents were very proud of him, especially his father, Mr. Eze. The evening before his exam, Emeka was ironing his uniform. Then Mrs. Eze said to him, Dr. Eze, don't touch that. Give them to Amara. She will iron them for you. You need to be well rested and ready for the exam tomorrow. Don't stress yourself. Mr. Eze was incredibly proud of Emeka and the whole village knew he was destined to be a doctor. His teachers had already helped him apply for scholarships and he had been accepted into several universities. Meanwhile, Amara was still expected to wash, iron and polish everyone's shoes. If she ever complained or asked for help, her mother would snap at her, saying, Amara, at least make yourself useful in one thing. Despite her struggles, Amara stayed up late to study for tests and exams. But no matter how hard she tried, her results were always among the lowest in her class. One day, the teacher decided to call out everyone's grades. When it was Amara's turn, she was the only student in class to score 0 out of 20. The room erupted with laughter and the students mocked and jeered at her at the teacher's instruction. Some screamed, Olodo, others screamed, Shame! Aren't your brother and sister like the smartest students in this school? The teacher said. How come you're not like them? What really went wrong? Amara stared at her score, wondering why she couldn't succeed no matter how hard she tried. At the end of the year, Emeka graduated with top honors in his class. His achievement was celebrated everywhere and neighbors came to congratulate the Ezes. Your son has made us proud. You must be very happy, one of them said. Mr. Eze beamed with pride. He said, Yes, he will build us a big house once he becomes a doctor. He bragged to anyone who would listen. At the start of the year, Emeka left for the city. Meanwhile, Chinwe the last born was next in line for success. She was excelling in her studies and had ambitions of becoming a lawyer, and everyone had high hopes for her. Amara, however, continued to feel left out and unloved. Chinwe had now completed her secondary school education and was already enrolling for her first year in the university. The following year, she got admission into the university, leaving Amara, who was still 3 years away from finishing secondary school, behind. That same year, Amara finally made a friend, a girl named Ebere. Ebere's father had a contract in the village with the government and had moved temporarily with his family to the village from the city. Ebere, like Amara, struggled in school and only did well in languages. They quickly became inseparable, always sitting together at the bottom of the class. One day, during break time, Amara was sitting on her own as usual and was carried away with drawing sketches at the back of her notebook. Suddenly a voice startled her. Wow, Amara, what are you drawing? That looks amazing, Ebere said, admiring her artwork. But Amara smiled shyly and quickly closed her notebook. Ebere invited Amara to her house later that day. Her family was well off. Her father owned businesses in the city, and her mother was starting a new venture in the village. When Amara stepped inside, she was warmly greeted by Ebere's kind mother. Ebere casually showed her mother her failed test scores, and her mother simply hugged her and said, "If you study harder, you'll do better next time." Then she told Ebere that her food was ready and she went back to work. Amara was shocked and she whispered, "Your mother still gives you food even when you fail?" Ebere burst into laughter. "What do you mean? Must I starve because I got bad grades?" Amara hesitated before explaining that she never showed her parents her test scores because they would punish her severely. She added that she had to hurry back home to cook. Ebere, remembering the bruises she had earlier noticed on Amara's body, grew concerned, and she pulled her friend into a hug. "Amara, my parents know I'm only good at languages. I can speak almost 15. One day I'll be an interpreter for politicians and tourists." "Maybe," Amara muttered, looking away. "But I'm different. I'm stupid. I have no talent. My parents were right. I'm just useless." When Amara went home later that evening, her mother scolded her for neglecting her chores, but she explained that she had been at a friend's house. Mrs. Eze laughed. "What friend? Your siblings have moved on with their lives, and the only thing you're concerned about is visiting friends. Have you done your homework? It's like you want your father to throw you out of this house." When the school year ended, Emeka and Chinwe came home for the holidays. Emeka was entering his final year of university, while Chinwe still had 3 years to go. Her parents were concerned about paying her tuition fees because Mr. Eze was retiring in a few months' time, and his pension was only going to be enough to sustain his household. Emeka promised to help with his scholarship pocket money, which was more than enough. His parents were very grateful to him. Mr. Eze rained praises on him. He was filled with pride and hope that he would soon start benefiting from the investment he had put into his children over the years. Meanwhile, Amara failed and had to repeat her class. Another year passed and she failed again. At this point, her parents had lost hope in her and paid no attention to her. Emeka eventually graduated from med school and found an internship space in the city, while Chinwe passed her second year. At the end of his first month as a doctor, Emeka returned home in a brand new car. He brought many gifts for his parents and introduced them to his fiancée, a dentist who was visibly pregnant. "I want to do right by her and marry her," Emeka announced. "So you mean she's a doctor like you?" Mr. Eze asked, his face lighting up. "Daughter-in-law welcome oh," Mrs. Eze said, though her smile did not reach her eyes. After Emeka and his fiancée left, she shared her worries with her husband. "Do you think now that he has his own wife, he will still build us a house?" "Don't worry," Mr. Eze reassured her. "He will build us a house and more. He will buy me a car too. If he was willing to support Chinwe while she was a student, now that he's earning, he will do even more. Besides, we now have two doctors in the family. This means more money." "All right," Mrs. Eze said, her mind already dreaming. "I hear doctors make a lot of money in huge sacks." Just then, Amara came to them. "Papa, Mama, I'm struggling at school and I cannot do this anymore." "Are you crazy?" her father snapped, slapping her harshly. "How will you survive? You have no talent. Your parents are not rich. You're not even good at any single thing." Her father's voice was loud and firm. "I don't want to hear another word about this again," he said. Amara had no choice but to keep going to school, even though it was tough for her. Her best friend Ebere was now a grade ahead, but they still met during breaks. 2 years passed. Ebere barely passed her final exams and left the village to continue her studies in the city, leaving Amara behind. Back home, the Aces were still waiting for Emeka to build them a house as promised. We worked so hard to send you to school, hoping you will build us a new house. Do we still have to live like this when our son is a doctor? Mrs. Eze often complained when he visited. Mama, I have my own family now, Emeka explained. Life in the city is expensive, and we are saving money to start our health center. His mother sighed and shook her head. You shouldn't have married so quickly. You knew you had to take care of us first. Even though Emeka brought them gifts, Mrs. Eze always felt it wasn't enough for a doctor. She turned her hopes to Chinwe. Chinwe, you are our last hope, she told her daughter. Think of me and your father. We sacrificed a lot to train you all in school. We can't keep working like this while his children have big careers in the city. Mama, brother is doing his best, Chinwe replied. Look at all the things he's buying for us. No one else in the village has such things and this much food. But Mrs. Eze wasn't satisfied. She blamed Emeka's wife for his reluctance to build them a house. It's her fault, she would say. If he wasn't married, he would have built us a house by now. Meanwhile, Amara felt more and more hopeless. One day, she decided she couldn't stay any longer, so she packed her things and left the village without telling her parents. They found her letter after she was already gone. She will come back, Mr. Eze said confidently. She has no skills and no education. Life in the city will be too hard for her. She will realize she was wrong and she will come back to us. Mrs. Eze nodded in agreement, but Amara had gone to stay with Ebere in the city, hoping to find her own way. More time passed, then Chinwe finished her studies and started working. One day, as Mrs. Eze was sitting in her shop and chatting with friends, she heard someone calling her from a shiny car. It was Chinwe. Mrs. Eze beamed with pride. Finally, my daughter, you've done so well for yourself. I hope you will now retire your father and build us a decent house. Mama, I'm only doing internship. The money I get is just enough for myself. In fact, if you could, you should be sending me more money so I don't spend all my money on bills. Mrs. Eze was stunned. You mean you spent all your pay on a big car? How could you do such a thing, Chinwe? You were our last hope, Chinwe. Chinwe sighed. Mama, everyone I work with drives big cars. I can't hold myself back while my mates are enjoying their youth. She then asked, have you heard of Amara, Mama? She called but refused to come back home, Mrs. Eze said bitterly. Your father told her never to step foot in this house again. Tears welled up in Mrs. Eze's eyes. How did my children turn out like this? When Mr. Eze came home, he tried to reason with Chinwe. My daughter, you just need to buy the materials. I will build the house myself. Papa, Chinwe said firmly, it is not my job as a daughter to fulfill the responsibilities you failed to achieve. You have enjoyed your youth now, please allow me enjoy mine. Mr. Eze spoke up angrily. How dare you talk to me like that? Did I not raise you? Now that you are educated, you think you can talk to me however you please? Chinwe left, scolded by her mother for disrespecting her father. She decided she couldn't stay any longer and returned to the city, leaving her parents behind. More time passed. Emeka and his wife now had two children. They lived in luxury, sent their kids to the best schools, and were building a large health center. Because of this, Emeka couldn't send money home as often as before. And with Chinwe spending all her money on herself, Mr. and Mrs. Eze's lives remained unchanged. Over time, Mr. Eze's health began to deteriorate, forcing him to stop working. Whenever he needed medication, Mrs. Eze would borrow money from the neighbors. When they questioned why she needed to borrow money despite having children with good jobs, she would lie, saying, my son sent money, but I haven't gone to withdraw it. I'll pay you as soon as I do. However, this became her usual excuse, and it often took a long time for her to pay them back. One night, Mr. Ace's condition worsened, and no one could ease his pain. He was rushed to the hospital, where the doctor said he needed immediate surgery. The cost of the operation was a sum Mrs. Ace had never imagined. Desperate, she went around the neighborhood trying to gather money, but most people refused to help. Some reminded her that she had taken too long to pay past debts. She even approached Ebere's mother for help. Ebere's mother, having opened several medicine shops in the village, likely had the money, but fearing that the Eze family wouldn't be able to pay her back, she refused to lend it. With no other options, Mrs. Eze called Emeka and Chinwe, telling them that their father had a final wish to speak to them. The next day, Emeka and Chinwe arrived home, and together with their mother they went to the hospital. This is unbelievable. My son is a doctor and he can't even save his father. What was the point of you going to medical school? Mrs. Eze exclaimed. Mama, I am not a surgeon, Emeka sighed. Papa is getting the help he needs from the right people. You know I have been saving money my entire career to start my own business. I've invested in expensive medical equipment for my health center and even had to take a loan. I have employees to pay. I simply don't have that kind of money right now. Mrs. Eze turned to look at Chinwe at the passenger seat. Mama, don't look at me, oh, Chinwe said quickly. I came home on public transport because I can't even afford fuel for my car, but I'll take out a loan when I get back to the city. Mrs. Eze snapped. Do I have to tell you to take the loan? You should have taken the loan the moment I told you your father needed money. What were you waiting for? The rest of the journey was filled with arguments and tears. When they arrived at the hospital ward, they found Mr. Eze's bed empty. Panic set in as they ran through the corridors, opening doors and searching for him. Finally, the doctor called them into his office with an update. He explained that someone had taken Mr. Eze the previous night and left an address where they could find him. The family rushed to the address in the city, arriving the next day. To their surprise, they found Mr. Eze well and recovering in a large upscale private hospital. As his family gathered around him, he leaned in and whispered, She's here. Just then, Amara walked in, carrying a bowl of fruits for her father. Everyone froze in shock. Amara, is this you? Her mother gasped in disbelief. Their father explained that Amara had brought him to the hospital. Papa, is this a joke? Emeka exclaimed. It's true, Papa, Chinwe said disinterestedly. This hospital is for the wealthy, politicians, celebrities, and not people like us. None of them could believe that Amara, the girl they had always considered talentless and dull, had managed to afford such treatment in such a hospital. Their father asked her to explain, but Amara only said, I'll tell everyone everything when Papa is discharged next week. Chinwe let out a mocking laughter. I can't wait to hear the story next week, if it's even true, she scoffed. I suppose we all have to take loans to pay back whoever gave her the money, because there's no way she can afford this herself. When Mr. Eze was finally discharged, Amara came to take him home. As they approached the village, their family waited eagerly, curiosity written all over their faces, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. A convoy of expensive cars pulled up, and when Amara stepped out, escorted by staff who opened the doors for her and her father, their jaws dropped. Is that Chinwe stammered, unable to finish her sentence. Oh, she must be working for that her rich friend. What's that her name again? Their mother muttered, still in shock. They rushed to welcome the guests into their small house. Inside the cramped living room, tension filled the air. Mrs. Eze burst into tears. Oh, Amara, my beautiful daughter, we searched for you everywhere. How could you leave us like that? We were so worried and heartbroken. Papa, I came for you because Ebere's mother told me about your suffering, Amara replied, gesturing toward her friend. After you told me never to come back, I went to live with Iberi. Her voice shook as she continued. I brought her here because you all still see me as a foolish girl who would never amount to anything. Tears streamed down her face. But I was good at something. I was good at designing clothes. Those sketches you always threw away, they saved Papa's life today. A heavy silence filled the room, thick with shame. Because of you all, I never believed in myself. Amara continued, her voice cracking. You mocked me, punished me, and beat me for not being book smart. Her wails echoed through the house. If Ebere hadn't believed in me, I would have been nothing. She told me I had talent. Her family took me in. She paid for my tuition to go to college for fashion design. And today, I am one of the top fashion designers in the country. All because of her. Ebere embraced Amara as she wept. You treated me like a servant in my own father's house, but I still succeeded despite you. Amara fell to her knees. You never loved me. Wiping her tears, Ebere gently lifted her and guided her outside. The convoy of cars started up again, and before anyone could react, they drove off. No one had the strength to stop them. In the days that followed, Mr. and Mrs. Eze managed to get Amara's address after pleading with Ebere's mother. The whole family decided to visit her. When they reached her neighborhood, they were stunned. This can't be real, Chinwe said in disbelief. I know she says she's a top designer, but she can't afford a place like this. She just can't. Chinwe, haven't you learnt anything? Emeka scoffed. You couldn't even afford Papa's medication, yet you still look down on our sister. Oh, now she's our sister, Chinwe sneered. You never cared about her. You just need her help with your health center loans. As they continued bickering, they arrived at Amara's mansion. At first, they were denied entry for not calling ahead. Eventually, they were allowed in and greeted by numerous staff members. When Amara returned home, they all spoke at once, pleading for forgiveness. Amara, you are my child. Can a mother truly hate her daughter? Mrs. Eze wept, her husband nodding beside her. Mama, Papa, Amara said calmly, you love Chinwe and Emeka more because of what they could offer. You broke me in the process. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held her composure. I forgave you long ago. I even paid for Papa's surgery, but that is all you will get from me. You were supposed to build me up, not break me. She took a deep breath. Mama, I never had a childhood. I never knew what it was like to play with other children or be told I was special. Many times I wanted to end my life because this house felt like a prison. Chinwe and Emeka enjoyed their lives, enjoyed their childhoods, had friends, went to university, but you always put me down. Mr. Eze looked away, ashamed and unable to look Amara in the eye. Papa, I wanted you to leave so you could see what that stupid girl, that Olodo, has become. Amara continued. I forgive you all today. The room erupted in sobs and apologies from all of them. But Amara simply placed a large stack of money on the coffee table. Mama, Papa, here is the money to clear all your debts, she said. Ebere's mother told me you live by borrowing from people. Mrs. Ete's face lit up as she took the money. One of my drivers will drive you back to the village. I have a meeting to attend. Amara stood up, preparing to leave. My sister, are you leaving already? I thought we could catch up, Emeka said, Chinwe nodding in agreement. Oh, it's no longer that girl, but my sister, Amara scoffed. I already have a sister, and her name is Ebere. With that, she walked away. In the end, Mr. and Mrs. Eze learned a painful but valuable lesson that love and support should be given to all children equally, not just to those who meet societal expectations. Mr. Eze, who had once believed that only formal education guaranteed success, now understood that talent and passion could pave the way to greatness just as much as a university degree. Their regrets could not change the past, but they served as a reminder that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and encouraged. And though Amara had forgiven them, the distance between them was a consequence they would carry for the rest of their lives. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting stories. Bye.